Selden paused in surprise. In the afternoon rush of the Grand Central Station, his eyes had been refreshed by the sight of Miss Lily Bart. It was a Monday in early September, and he was returning to his work from a hurried dip into the country. But what was Miss Bart doing in town? If she had appeared to be catching a train, he might have inferred that he had come on her in transition between the country houses which disputed her presence after the Newport season. But her desultory air perplexed him. She stood apart from the crowd, letting it drift by her, and wearing an air of irresolution which might be the mask of a very definite purpose. It struck him that she was waiting for someone, but he hardly knew why the idea arrested him. There was nothing new about Lily Bart, yet he could never see her without a faint movement of interest. It was characteristic of her that she always roused speculation, that her simplest acts seemed the result of far-reaching intentions. An impulse of curiosity made him turn out of his direct line and stroll past her. He knew that if she did not wish to be seen, she would contrive to elude him, and it amused him to think of putting her skill to the test. "Mr. Selden, what good luck!" She came forward, smiling, eager almost, in her resolve to intercept him. One or two persons brushing past lingered to look, for Miss Bart was a figure to arrest even the suburban traveler rushing to his train. Selden had never seen her more radiant. Her vivid head, relieved against the dull tints of the crowd, made her more conspicuous than in a ballroom, and under her dark hat and veil, she regained the girlish smoothness, the purity of tint that she was beginning to lose after 11 years of late hours and indefatigable dancing. Was it really 11 years? Had she indeed reached the 29th birthday with which her rivals credited her? "What luck," she repeated. "How nice of you to come to my rescue." He responded joyfully that to do so was his mission in life, and asked her what form the rescue was to take. "Oh, almost any, even to sitting on a bench and talking to me. One sits out a cotillion, why not sit out a train? It isn't a bit hotter here than in Mrs. Van Osburgh's conservatory, and some of the women are not a bit uglier." She broke off laughing to explain that she had come up to town from Tuxedo on her way to the Gus Trenners at Bellamont and had missed the 3:15 train to Rhinebeck. "And there isn't another until 5:30. She consulted the little jeweled watch. 2 hours to wait, and I don't know what to do with myself. My maid came up this morning to do some shopping for me and was to go on to Bellamont at 1 o'clock, and my aunt's house is closed, and I don't know a soul in town." She glanced plaintively about the station. "It is hotter here than Mrs. Van Osburgh's after all. If you can spare the time, do take me somewhere for a breath of air."
They stroll up Madison Avenue, turning onto Selden Street. He invites her to his apartment.
"I can give you a cup of tea in no time, and you won't meet any bores." Her color deepened. She still had the art of blushing at the right time, but she took the suggestion as lightly as it was made. "Why not? It's too tempting. I'll take the risk," she declared. "Oh, I'm not dangerous," he said in the same key. In truth, he had never liked her as well as at that moment. He knew she had accepted it without an afterthought. He could never be a factor in her calculations, and there was a surprise, a refreshment almost, in the spontaneity of her consent. On the threshold he paused, feeling for his latchkey. "There's no one here, but I have a servant who's supposed to come in the mornings, and he may have put out the tea things and provided some cake." He ushered her into a slip of a hall hung with old prints. Then she found herself in a small library with its walls of books, a pleasantly faded turkey rug, a littered desk, and a tea tray on a low table near the window. A breeze had sprung up, bringing a fresh scent of mignonette from the flower box on the balcony. Lily sank with a sigh into one of the shabby leather chairs. How delicious to have a place like this all to oneself. What a miserable thing it is to be a woman. She leaned back in a luxury of discontent. Selden was rummaging in the cupboard for the cake. "Even women," he said, "have been known to enjoy the privileges of a flat." "Oh, governesses or widows, but not girls, not poor, miserable, marriageable girls." I even know a girl who lives in a flat. She sat up in surprise. You do? I do, he assured her, emerging from the cupboard with the cake. Oh, I know. You mean Gertie Farish. She smiled a little unkindly, but I said marriageable. And besides, she has a horrid little place and no maid and such queer things to eat. Her cook does the washing and the food tastes of soap. I should hate that, you know. You shouldn't dine with her on wash days, said Selden, cutting the cake. They both laughed, and he knelt to light the lamp under the kettle while she measured out the tea. As he watched her hand with its slender pink nails and the sapphire bracelet slipping over her wrist, he was struck with the irony of suggesting to her a life such as his cousin, Gertrude Farish, had chosen. Lily was so evidently the victim of the civilization which had produced her that the links of her bracelet seemed like manacles chaining her to her fate. She seemed to read his thought. It was horrid of me to say that of Gertie, she said with charming compunction. I forgot she was your cousin, but we're so different, you know. She likes being good, and I like being happy. And besides, she's free and I am not. If I were, I dare say I could be happy, even in her flat. It must be pure bliss to arrange the furniture just as one likes and give all the horrors to the ashman. If I could only do over my aunt's drawing room, I know I should be a better woman. Is it so very bad? He asked sympathetically. She smiled at him across the teapot. That shows how seldom you come there. Why don't you come oftener? When I do come, it's not to look at Mrs. Peniston's furniture. Nonsense, she said, you don't come at all, and yet we get on so well when we meet. Perhaps that's the reason, he answered promptly. I'm afraid I haven't any cream, you know. Shall you mind a slice of lemon instead? I shall like it better. She waited while he cut the lemon. But that is not the reason, she insisted. The reason for what? For your never coming. She leaned forward, a shade of perplexity in her charming eyes. I wish I knew. I wish I could make you out. Of course, I know there are men who don't like me, and there are others who are afraid of me. They think I want to marry them. She smiled up at him frankly. But I don't think you dislike me, and you can't possibly think I want to marry you. No, I absolve you of that, he agreed. Well then. He stood leaning against the chimney-piece and looking down at her with an air of indolent amusement. The provocation in her eyes increased his amusement. He had not supposed she would waste her powder on such small game, but perhaps she was only keeping her hand in, or perhaps a girl of her type had no conversation but of the personal kind. At any rate, she was amazingly pretty, and he had asked her to tea and must live up to his obligations. Well then, he said with a plunge, perhaps that's the reason. What? The fact that you don't want to marry me. Perhaps I don't regard it as such a strong inducement to go and see you. He felt a slight shiver as he ventured this, but her laugh reassured him. Dear Mr. Selden, that wasn't worthy of you. It's stupid of you to make love to me, and it isn't like you to be stupid. She leaned back with an air so enchantingly judicial that, if they had been in her aunt's drawing room, he might almost have tried to disprove her deduction. Don't you see, she continued, that there are men enough to say pleasant things to me, and that what I want is a friend who won't be afraid to say disagreeable ones when I need them. Sometimes I have fancied you might be that friend. I don't know why, except that you are neither a prig nor a bounder, and that I shouldn't have to pretend with you or be on my guard against you. Her voice had dropped to a note of seriousness.